Fairfield Christian. Hope you guys had a great weekend. It is now Monday morning. It's time to get into our scripture verse for our Monday morning devotions. We are once again looking at people of the Bible, this week looking at Haman. Now, Haman may not be a popular person. He's probably unpopular for one very important reason. He's a bad guy. That's right, he's not a good guy at all. He's a villain. So if you haven't read through the book of Esther before, you may not have heard his name before, but he's not a good guy. Some of you might be thinking, why would we look at Haman? Because we can actually learn things from bad people. We can certainly learn how not to behave like Haman. We can see what he does and says, I'm going to do just the opposite of what he did so that I can be a better person. So it's important that we look at people and the things that they did and their positions. He was a very powerful person, but he didn't do things in the right way. Now, the story of Haman is found in the book of Esther. The three main characters in that book are Esther, Mordecai, and Haman. The book of Esther is interesting for a couple different reasons. First of all, it's one of only two books in the Bible to be named after a woman, books of Esther and Ruth. In addition, probably more interesting is the fact that God is not specifically mentioned anywhere in the book. That's right, it's a book in the Bible that does not specifically mention God. Now, God is alluded to. God's providence is kind of mentioned in there. That's God kind of working through people, kind of working behind the scenes, making sure that things happen according to his will. But God himself is not specifically mentioned. But it is a very important book to look at because it's important to understand God does not always work through huge, giant miracles. Sometimes he works through people. There's lots of incredible things in the Bible from, one of my favorites is Elijah calling down fire from heaven. How cool would that have been to see? Parting of the Red Sea, Jonah being swallowed by a fish, all incredible miracles. But sometimes God just uses people. And the book of Esther actually talks about people are sometimes placed into a position for such a time as this. God put you here for this reason, to have an effect on this situation. That's certainly the case with Esther. God allowed her to become queen so that she could have influence to save the Jews. So that's why it's a very important book to read. Now, the story gets incredibly complicated, so I'm not going to go through the entire story today. I'm going to focus primarily on Mordecai and Haman. But for you guys that are definitely capable of reading, I would highly suggest you read through the book of Esther. Do that this week, either on your own or maybe with your parents and your family. It's a very dramatic story. It's a very good read. It's unlike some parts of the Bible, it's actually a pretty fluid story from beginning to end. It doesn't get all convoluted. It kind of pretty much goes straight through the story. And again, it's not that long, pretty easy to read. You could probably read it in one sitting, especially you older kids could probably sit down and without too much time invested, read the entire book. Again, it's a great book to read. So again, we're going to concentrate on Mordecai and Haman. One thing to know about these two men is that they did not like one another. Primarily because Mordecai is a Jew and Haman is an Amalekite. Now, if you go back in the Bible, you'll know that the Jews and the Amalekites don't like each other from way, way back. And again, I'm not going to get into that whole story because that get kind of complicated as well. But just know Mordecai is a Jew, Haman is an Amalekite, and the differences between those two groups have been going on for a really long time. Now, Haman and Mordecai are co-workers. They work together. They're both government officials working under King Xerxes. But Haman gets a promotion. In fact, Haman is made the second most powerful person in all of Persia. And Persia at this point is probably the most powerful nation in the world, which means Haman is probably the second most powerful person in the entire world. How cool is that? He's got all kinds of power, money, influence. And yet he's not happy. He has everything that anybody could want, except actually being king. He's just one step short of that. But he has everything else a person could want. The second most powerful person in the world, super rich, has anything he could ask for. But he's not happy because of one person, Mordecai. Mordecai won't bow down to him. And Mordecai won't bow down to him because he's an Amalekite. And it makes Haman mad. So mad. He's so full of pride that he not only wants to get revenge on Mordecai, but he wants to get revenge on all the Jews. He wants to get back at them. I'll get you. That's not fair. You should bow down to me. I deserve this. That's kind of the attitude he's taking. It's very easy to look at Haman and say, man, how rude he was. But you know what? We all do the same thing. We all at some point in our life have said, you know what, I deserve to be treated better by this person, or I deserve this, or I deserve that. Or we've not allowed ourselves to be happy, or what's even more important, to have joy because of another person and their actions, or the way somebody treated us, or how we think they treated us. We allow those things to affect us in a negative way, and we allow that to make us upset, we allow that to make us angry, and it causes us to make bad decisions, like the decisions Haman made. He was so mad at Mordecai, he went to the king and tricked the king into signing a law saying that all the Jews should be killed, all because he had a dispute with Mordecai. In fact, Haman, he at one point thinks he gets away with all of it, that he's going to end up getting all the Jews killed, and he thinks that the king wants to honor him. That's how big his head is. That's how big his ego is at this point. He thinks the king wants to honor him because the king asks him, what would you do to honor somebody that did something right? And it turns out Mordecai had saved the king's life. He exposed a plot that these other guys had, that they were going to try to kill the king. And Mordecai found out about it and warned the king through Esther. And because of that, the king wanted to recognize Mordecai. But Haman, thinking that the reward was going to be for him, said you should do this, and this, and honor that person because of that. And then the king tells Haman, well, yes, that's perfect. Do all of those things for Mordecai. And now the person that Haman does not like gets this honor. And that's where our verse comes from today. We are in Esther. So Haman took the robes and put them on Mordecai, placed him on the king's own horse, and led him through the city square, shouting, "This is what the king does for someone he wishes to honor." Afterward, Mordecai returned to the palace gate, but Haman hurried home, dejected and completely humiliated. All right, so Haman had to honor Mordecai, and he certainly didn't like that. In fact, Haman actually later on in the story ends up being killed by Xerxes because he's an evil person that did really bad things. And it's very easy to sit back and say, he got what he deserved. But that's not where I want us to focus on the story. I want us to think about ourselves. I want us to think about, when I get upset, why am I getting upset? Specifically when I get upset at another person. Why am I getting upset at that other person? Why are they making me angry? Why are they stealing my joy from me? Is it really worth it? Is it because I'm not getting my way? Is it because they're doing something that I didn't expect? Or is it doing something that's not a convenience for me? And if it's those selfish reasons as to why we're getting upset, we're really wasting our energy. Unfortunately, many people take that being upset to the next level, and they want to get revenge, or they want to get back at the other person. Quite honestly, I see it at school all the time, right? That's usually why many of you end up in my office, is because somebody did something wrong, and then somebody decided to get that person back. It's usually the person that tries to get them back is the one that gets caught, right? The person that tries to retaliate is the one that gets caught, and then they end up in my office, and they're like, but they did this first. It doesn't make your actions okay. It doesn't make it all right. In fact, anytime we think about taking revenge or getting even with somebody else or getting back at somebody, rarely do things work out. In fact, I would say they never work out, because you're probably ruining a relationship, or things are going to escalate and get even worse. You might actually end up hurting somebody else. You might get into serious trouble, like with Haman. He ended up dying because of his actions. Revenge, getting back at somebody, never works out. You know what does work out? Forgiveness. Talking to people. Working things out in a calm, rational way. That's what works out. All right, so think about your own feelings, your own reactions to people. I want you to think about that and how you respond to people and why you get upset when you do get upset. All right, do that for me this week. That's where we're focused our devotions this week. We will talk about Haman more on Friday in chapel. It'll be a good one. You don't want to miss it. Hope you guys have a fantastic week. Hopefully see you guys sooner rather than later. God bless.